Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another deep dive episode from Story Archives. I'm your host, Mario Busto, alongside
the other host, Zachary Newton. Welcome back.
We're back with another deep dive for Silo. Season 2, Episode 2, titled Order, and Bernard's struggle to keep it within Silo 18. It's 18, right? Not 17?
Yeah, they are in 18. I think right now Juliette is in 17, according to one of our commenters.
Juliette's in 17. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What song is that? You are 18 going on. What is that? Is that Sinatra?
No.
What are you gonna do?
Don't think so. I know the song.
Anyways, so 17, 18. So they got 16 next to them somewhere there.
Along with like 1 through 100, I'm sure.
Yeah. Interesting thing is now Bernard is dealing with the situation where everyone in the silo pretty much has witnessed something that they did not think was possible.
Mm-hmm.
What would the equivalent of that be for us, like as humans on Earth? Would it be UFOs? What would it be? Because these people have been living here for 140 years, give or take, according to what we know so far.
Yeah.
And they've never seen a cleaner, first, not clean, and 2, survive to go over the hill.
That's true.
And for all they know, she could have died right over the hill, but it's the fact that you can't see it that's the real
wonder.
Kick in the balls, you know?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what I could really compare that to. I don't know. Maybe it's just like, oh yeah, aliens exist, and you know your brother happens to be one.
Aliens and your brother happens to be one. No, I don't think that's right.
I don't know. I'm thinking like the Men in Black scene where they're at the restaurant and this guy's like just face and like head opens up. It's like a little alien dude in there controlling you. Yeah.
Comment on this video, what would be the equivalent of seeing Juliette go over the hill for us humans on Earth in this present day in history, right? I feel like maybe the equivalent in the past would be like somebody time traveling from the future to the past and showing somebody an iPhone. Like I feel like that would be maybe and then zapping back to the future, and then they're stuck with trying to explain to people what they just saw. I don't know.
It's like Biff in Back to the Future, where he brings the sports almanac thing that has all the winnings.
Yeah, I know this is kind of blasphemy, but I've never watched Back to the Future.
What?
I haven't watched a single Back to the Future.
Bro, you gotta watch. You gotta watch Marty McFly.
I think I've seen about 20 minutes of Back to the Future. It's pretty much.
You gotta watch it.
It's one of the It's like one of my secret. It's about like film watching that I don't tell people because it's a classic. But I'm just not interested.
It is.
I'm just not interested in watching it.
I would go watch the first one. 2 and 3 are I could care less. The first one was really good. I liked it.
Okay.
It is a classic. Like, so you have to watch it just to respect the classics, but solid.
Okay. Yeah, well, they're not here. People are not here for our Back to the Future coverage, so we're going to get back to Silo.
No, they're here for our Back to the Silo coverage.
Yeah, let's get back to the Silo coverage. Do you think Bernard... All right, so we have a bunch of things going on in this episode, and it's the reason I love this particular episode so much. It feels like the proper kickoff of season 2. Mm-hmm. To be honest, feels like it should have been episode 1 and not episode 2, because you get all of the kind of setup for Juliette's journey, right? The only thing I will say, and maybe they were planning on dropping this as the first episode, is that you wouldn't have been able to go to Bernard and see him watching Juliette's footage to see what she was doing.
Yeah.
Right? That she went to the vault that there was a bunch of bodies at. The question is, did Bernard know about that silo? Because from my understanding, based on the way he's talking in this episode, he had no idea that there was a massacre in Silo 17.
Yeah, I don't think he knew there was a massacre. He was at the very least seeing that for the first time in this episode, but I don't think he even knew that something went wrong. I think he probably knows there's more silos around him, but has no communication with them, would be my guess. So think it's a complete surprise for him. And I don't mind episode 1 being what it was and this episode being what it is, because this one, first off, is great. What I do wish they did, though, was probably drop them both at the same time, because episode 1 it was real slow. Like, I imagine there was a decent amount of drop off. People, building up anticipation for like, what, a year and a half trying to get back into this. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, wah, wah. It's just real slow. Focused on one person trying to get across the bridge. I don't want to keep harping on episode 1, but
I didn't think it was a bad episode.
It wasn't bad, but it didn't have a lot of momentum. It really didn't. And I wish they had dropped the both of these at the same time, because this one, I'm way more excited to watch episode 3 than I was ready to watch episode 2, just because of how episode 1 started. That's all I'll say.
I feel you there. You know what, though? I mean, if we want to compare it to another hit show that dropped this year, House of the Dragon, where it felt like almost nothing happened in a lot of episodes for half of that season. This is not doing that. And Apple doesn't need to do it, because this is maybe their hit show right now. It's probably Severance and this and Ted Lasso. So you got to space these out for sure. You don't need to do 2 a week. Also, I appreciate it from a podcast schedule perspective. So, well, that's that too.
In terms of with you there, though.
Yeah. In terms of the other things going on in the silo, you have Bernard has to get things in order, right? Like I just mentioned, these people have seen something for the first time that they haven't ever seen before. As it is, she went out there under shady circumstances. Most of the Down Deep doesn't believe that she asked to go outside, right? Yeah. You have a rebellion brewing. You have Bernard, who sees the actual fruits of a rebellion in a different silo and what the outcome was. And you got he has a whole bunch of stuff to get in order. And I got to say, 10 out of 10 job by Bernard in this episode, because he manages to do a lot with very little time, right? He puts Sims as sheriff, temporary sheriff, right? He seems to have found his new shadow in Meadows, right? We learn a lot more about Meadows, which I was not expecting to get that much of in season 2, but here we are. He delivers a speech that's fantastic, because he freaking fakes everything. He fakes hecklers. He fakes a new story, which he got that information because of the eavesdropping on Walker and McLean's conversation. And then he gives these people something to hope in, right? So he does listen to Meadows in some sense, right? Where she says the people need something to believe in. Well, what are they going to believe in? They're going to believe in the fact that we gave her our new heat tape technology, and we're going to keep on advancing this technology so that we one day can get back above ground. So that gives the people a hope to live for that's bigger than themselves, which is a future that they can get above ground again, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty interesting of how he was able to manage to do that. The question is, how much trouble is Shirley going to continue to brew down in the Down Deep?
I mean, clearly, I think she's going to be brewing enough trouble. I don't think they made, or Bernard made Sims sheriff, but he did put him in charge of the whole sheriff's department. I don't think Paul Billings was removed from office.
Same thing. He's a puppet at this point, really.
Well, of course he is.
To the degree he allows himself to be a puppet.
Yeah, I mean, we know he's hiding a piece of Georgia.
Yeah, the Georgia travel brochure. I mean, he has a conflicting nature, right? Because he's an honorable guy, and he's really upset that they're breaking the bylaws that the founders left, right? Mm-hmm. They're just breaking them in order to maintain power, which is an interesting sort of theme for him this season, which is he going to continue to just obey what they tell him to do, or is he going to actually risk potentially, his life to do something that's right for the silo? And there's a bigger question. What is right for the long-term future of the silo?
Yeah, and that is a question that I feel like I have less of an answer on so far in this season, because I think I mentioned it in our instant reaction, but this episode makes me think that Bernard maybe not such a bad guy. Knowing that the reality of what does happen if you open those doors, like it's not at least it does not appear to be a lie. Like, it's not a fake threat that, like, oh, we're protecting you from the evils out there. It's like, no, it actually is bad outside. So it, like, I kind of get a lot of the justification for some of the things that he does and the decisions that he makes. I just don't know if I'm gonna feel that way about him throughout this entire season. Like I'm sure there's gonna be something more that we learn. Like I think we need to have a fairly clear evil side. I would hate to I'd hate to get through this whole show rooting for Juliette and team and come out the other end and like just get rugged and Juliette have been the bad actor here and like making all of the wrong decisions and all of the wrong moves. That would ruin this show for me.
I think he's just a typical government bureaucrat, to be honest, where he thinks that he knows what's best for the people and the people don't know what's best for themselves. I forget who I was talking to today. It might have been my cousin. And I think he mentioned, he was speculating about, when these silos were all formed. His theory is all these silos had to be connected at one point. Mm-hmm. So think about it. The catastrophe happens. You have to have the first settlers move into these silos, right?
Yeah.
These people know other silos exist.
Mm-hmm.
So that means the silos had to have been connected in some sense. Mm-hmm. Maybe through communication, maybe through some other means, who knows? At what point did the protocol become, we are no longer supposed to acknowledge these other silos that exist around us, and we're not to work together in some sense?
Mm-hmm.
At what point? Because if you think about it, the silos could operate in conjunction with each other, where they could all have some of these explorers, and if you had that heat tape that could seal the tape, you could kind of test, push the limits of how far you can explore in this wasteland, right? Because what's to stop a silo member from 18 to walk across to silo 17, as long as their suit was okay, because they have that depressurization, whatever you want to call it, that decontamination room that sprays you down so you can come into the silo. So I wonder at what point, was that always the plan and the order? Like, hey, the first 3 generations of people are going to know about these silos, but then eventually we're going to brainwash and use so much propaganda that we're going to create a new version of history, right? And maybe that's what the first rebellion was about, was to eliminate the knowledge of the other silos to the people.
Well, it is a very good question. I do think that the silos were all connected at some point. I feel like maybe there was just a rebellion that caused them all to kind of like self-isolate. But, the other interesting thing though is the book that Bernard has that he opens is the Order. It's not the Pact, right? And the Pact was what was provided by the founders that we don't know. So unless I'm confusing things, and these are just 2 different names for the same, I guess, book and same group of information, I feel like this is, I don't know, maybe it's like a new order. Maybe we've deviated from what the initial mission was of these silos, which would have been communicated in the Pact, and now everything is in this book. I don't know. Is this
going to be some sort of Wizard of Oz situation where, there is still that group of elite Order leaders, right? And they exist, but they're going to very much be a sort of a phantom of, a shell of what they used to be, right? Kind of just like a shell of an organization still, grappling for power in some sense, where if nobody obeyed them, they would just lose all their power pretty much, because there's no way to enforce it for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably see that being the case. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're not ruling really through brute force. It's just a lot of manipulation of information.
Was that room Bernard was in the vault, you think, Zach?
Yeah, the room Bernard was in was the vault. I mentioned this in the instant reaction as well. That shot of him in the vault also tells us that, or server room or whatever, tells us that that's the same room that the guy in episode 1 was in. Because it's the same door, it's the same window, it's the same keypad. And we know that place still had power. And so like part of the theory that I was kind of talking about in the instant reaction was like, well, I think all the silos had to have been connected because that entire silo 17, didn't have power, but that server room or that vault still did.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine there's probably some central like hub that's feeding information to all of the vaults. And I mean, head of IT. So,
Well, I think I don't know if I think Bernard doesn't have anybody he's talking to. I used to think he did, but I think now he just has that book, and that's all he has to go by. For whatever reason, I don't think that they have any connection to another, like leader of a different order, right? Because he mentions that in the book there's no instruction of what to do when a cleaner doesn't clean. It's just prepare for war. That's it. So he can't call anybody and be like, hey, what do I do? I've never been in this situation before. Like, what steps did you take, 20 years ago? There's nobody to talk to, I would assume. That's why he's doing what he's doing.
it is possible. And maybe that's why there's a book. Maybe there isn't any communication, but if that is the case, I'm confused as to what would have triggered his key for Vault 18.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
That's what flashing red.
That's what I was going to ask you. Was what was that about? Because he had a key that said 18.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the big question there, right?
Yeah.
Of where does that go to? Is it the vault? What is it?
I don't know. Like we know there's a group of people in janitorial that watch everybody. Maybe there's a group of higher elites that watch all of the silos, and so they had eyes on like, oh, this person is going somewhere they shouldn't go. Though I don't know, it could have been a safeguard. Just put in place to like track like, oh, if somebody moves this far away from the silo, that's an alert or a warning for some reason.
Yeah. I have no idea. I feel like we're destined for a couple flashback episodes. I mean, we already got some flashbacks in episode 1, but I feel like we're gonna get some flashbacks of maybe Meadows, her encounter in the vault. Meadows' secret of whatever it is going on with her, which we're going to talk about shortly. And maybe we'll go back in time to pre-rebellion Silo 18. Maybe we'll also get a bit of that. Who knows? Or maybe we'll get like an actual like D-Day type situation of when the people entered the silos.
I don't think we'll get that. Like I feel like that's probably something to hold out for more like a season finale thing. Yeah, like that feels more appropriate for that setting. I was gonna say, I also thought it was kind of funny that you mentioned earlier, is this going to be sort of like a Wizard of Oz moment? Because isn't that the story that Judge Meadows points to, where she wants that hot air balloon?
Yeah, but I didn't think about her story upon first watch, at face value. But now as I look at it again, perhaps it's, some sort of metaphor for whoever the powers that be are, right? And we got to talk about Meadows now. She quits drinking in this episode the moment she realizes that Juliette went over the hill and that she didn't clean.
And has no withdrawals.
Yeah, it was too soon, dude. It was day 1. I mean, anybody can quit something for a day.
Even a hangover.
Hangover, yeah, true. I mean, they didn't really go into details if she had a hangover or not, but who knows? Maybe she relapses and whatnot. But it seems like she found purpose, so I don't really foresee that relapse occurring unless she's, jaded by something that occurs later. But I do wonder what her deal is, and she does end the episode with saying that she wants to go out. Mm-hmm. So is that a literal saying I want to go out now, or is that in the future, once I'm done being your shadow, I want to go out?
I don't think it's going to be an immediate thing for her. I feel like it's going to be a little farther down the line in the season, because she has some role to play for Bernard still. It wasn't just stand behind me, for this speech and, show everybody that we're on the same side here. So I imagine that'll probably be like a mid-season thing where she goes out to clean and I guess finally gets her freedom. The burden is lifted. whatever information, whatever 25-year thing she's been holding on to.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see if she lives, right? I think there's going to be a few deaths in this season, especially because we find out that Sim's wife is legit obsessed with her husband being the most powerful guy in the silo. Now, whatever the motive is for that, I have no idea. But the more and more I saw that interaction between him and his wife, then more and more I think it's a bad idea for him to ever be overseer or the shadow of Bernard. I think he's legit not a good person. Like, I feel like that would be the worst move for the silo.
To have Sims be the shadow for Bernard.
Yes. I don't know. There was a weird feeling I got watching the conversation with his wife and him. I think that they're completely selfish people. Maybe she's the selfish one of the two. But that conversation was all about power posturing and not about what's good for the silo. It was about very political games. How can you get to the most powerful position? Now, whether his son has some sort of health defect that nobody knows about, and she has some sort of motive for that, I don't know. But they're a very weird family, and I don't know what is motivating them at the moment, other than power.
Yeah, they are, and I mean, like, think about in season 1, I think the main thing that turned Bernard off from letting Sims be his shadow was the fact that he put his family above that of the silo when he directed some of the guys to go to his house.
I did make that prediction in our Silo 1 recap, which if you, like many of the people in the silo, don't know, like this people in the silo don't know what's going on prior to their time or what's going on with Juliette. A lot of our listeners listening to this episode have no idea that we've done a year's worth of shows that you can go and catch up on if you go to our Story Archives channel. And if you like what we're doing, make sure to like this video, make sure to subscribe, and leave us a review. All right. So talking about Sims, I made a prediction in that season 1 recap that maybe it was the trailer, that his theme this season is going to be whether he puts his family over the silo or his son, perhaps, because there was a specific conversation they highlighted between him and Pete Nichols, which is Juliette's father, where he's asking for Juliette's location, and he says, "Would you help the people who are hunting your daughter?" And then Sims goes, "Nobody's more important. No one person is more important than the 10,000 to come." So Sims is going to be met with a situation like that this season. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if he's going to kill Meadows to be the shadow. I don't know if he's going to start a mutiny. Who knows? But speaking of mutinies, we do got to talk about what's going on in the Down Deep, because I think there's a power struggle going on down there between Knox and Shirley. Knox is trying to keep the order of things as they stand, and Shirley is fed up. She's looking for a rebellion right now. And I'm of the mindset that I think Knox knows more than he's letting on, whereas you in the instant reaction don't think he is. So what do you think about that situation?
I still don't think he knows more than he's letting on to. I just feel like he's trying to be fairly level-headed and cool-tempered down there. I mean, starting a rebellion right now where everybody's only just starting to ask the questions and we don't really know what's going on outside. We don't really know what happened to Juliette. I mean, keep in mind this whole outburst from Shirley was essentially immediately after seeing Juliette go over the hill. So, I mean, I kind of get his rationale just in terms of like trying to keep the peace. I mean, he's got the line where he basically says that this place is a tinderbox. Like this isn't the time. So I don't know that he knows more beyond just like trying to not, I guess, have everything go up in flames.
Well, he does visit his boy down in what was that? Is it what is that place called? It's like the blacksmith, pretty much down there.
I don't think we really got a name for it.
It's like a forge or something. I don't know what it is, but he meets with his friend and he asks him for 2 favors. He says, do not make weapons for anybody who comes and asks you to make weapons. And then he whispers in his ear the second request.
Yeah, we don't know what that is.
What do you think it is?
I don't even know where to begin.
Well, start.
I mean, don't make any weapons for anybody that asks. Again, I kind of think that is mostly out of trying to protect the silo and avoid a lot of bloodshed.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if the thing that he's asking for is personal. Maybe he wants some personal protection. Hey, don't make anybody weapons, but
Make
give
me a weapon.
one. Yeah,
Give me one just in case.
that or maybe kind of going back to the trailer, maybe it has to do with that that rocket like type thing that we saw.
That's a
go
great
up and
guess.
sprinkle leaflets.
That's a great guess. But didn't we see in the trailer when that thing goes up that there's papers that say Juliette lives or something like that?
Correct. We did.
I don't think Knox would be behind that.
Unless he knows more than he's letting on to, like you believe.
I mean, it begs the question at that point, whenever that occurs, which I kind of hate doing that when it hasn't happened yet. Will the people, I'm assuming Juliette's she's going to find a way to communicate back to the silo that she's alive. That's what I can think, at least.
I feel like there has to be a point somewhere towards the middle of this season, maybe at the latest, where she ends up finding her way back to Silo 18 and, finding some secret way in. Otherwise, I kind of think her half of the storyline might be a little boring. But, I could see a scenario where she doesn't come back to Silo 18 and instead makes a way out, makes a way into another silo, continues exploring things. Like, I could potentially see that happening. And then, maybe we get what you were talking about which was less of like a flashback to like this D-Day event or whatever that caused everything, but more of just like this, she's piecing together the puzzle of like what's going on and maybe who's in charge. So I think that could be something I could see happening.
Yeah. I do wonder with like whatever's in the vault that Juliette's going to go into, I would assume she's going to go into it, right? Her story has to continue in some sense. And I don't know. I'm really curious to see what that's going to be. What is her goal going to be? Is it going to be to connect all the silos together? What is it going to be? Maybe before Freedom Day, right? Maybe there was some sort of existence in the silo where the people knew the truth, but they also knew the fact that it's toxic outside. But they also knew that other silos exist, that there's other people like them, that those silos, some of them do not exist anymore because of rebellions that took place. And maybe that's what it is. I don't know. There's so many question marks. Another question mark is Lucas in the mines. I mean, we keep on hearing about these mines and being sent to the mines and this looming threat of the mines over every single person who might act out, right? Where are these mines? We haven't seen an entrance to these mines. We haven't seen anything from these mines. So I really want to catch up with Lucas and see where his head is at and how does he come back into play here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so do I. Right now, the mines kind of feel like this mythical place that just doesn't really exist. Like maybe they just kill a bunch of people and dump their body in a hole and it's like, oh, they're in the mines. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, are they digging deeper? Are they digging into another silo? There's got to be a purpose other than just punishment to dig for the sake of digging. I just don't see that being a thing, because if you wanted to punish people, I mean, send them out to clean.
Yeah.
The ultimate threat.
I have no idea what the hell they're doing in the mines. I have no idea. No idea. Oh, man. There's so many directions we can go. And it's moments like these where I'm just very glad that I didn't read the books.
The books.
Where I have no idea what's going to happen here.
Yeah, we neither of us are book readers, so all of these theories and hypotheses are all straight off the dome from watching the show. So we'll get some right, like we did in season 1. We'll get some wrong like we did in season 1.
Is that the end of your thought?
That's the end of my thought.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about Martha a little bit, because I think Martha's gonna die in this season.
I don't think she's gonna be a long-lived character.
I don't think Walker lives. I think Walker ends up being some sort of martyr that unifies the Down Deep. And I'll be honest, I don't like Shirley. I don't know, something about her I don't like. I don't think that she thinks through almost anything.
She's very hot-headed. But then again, so is Juliette.
The problem with Shirley to me is that, yes, she's on the right side of history, right? She knows the truth. She's fighting for the truth. But the way she's going about it is really dumb, in my opinion. I feel like there's other ways to go about it that are a little bit more, not completely doomed to fail right off the bat, right? We opened the season with this rebellion in Silo 17. We saw all those idiots march out there together with no suits on. I still think it would be extraordinarily dumb for everybody to go out all at once. Now, we talked about the generator failing in that silo. Maybe that was the reason they did that stupidity.
Flooding, they would have died if they stayed. So
I think if anybody, like if I'm Bernard personally, Shirley doesn't think that it's toxic outside, go outside. Go outside. We're going to watch you from here. You can go outside. Okay? We'll even give you a fancy suit. Okay?
With the new heat tape.
With the new heat tape. And you can come back and you can let us know. I don't know. I mean, I think it would be very easy to make people believe, that it's toxic outside.
It's a great card to be able to play. I mean, the whole question, the biggest question in the silo is it safe outside or is it not?
Why is that? Why does that have to be such a mystery? Just
know.
Send somebody out there. If that's going to be a question now, we're going to send somebody out there. Don't worry. Who wants to volunteer? We're not going to make anybody go, but who wants to go? You're free to go when you want. Who wants to go out there?
I mean, it is the truth. They are free to go when they want. And I mean, like from what I recall, for the most part, there's a lot of time that goes in between cleanings, right? Because whenever people start to question things and they're like, well, I want to go out. Okay, they go out, they clean, and then everyone sees them die. And that's kind of the end of it for a while until, people just start naturally asking questions. Well, what happened? Is it safe now? I haven't seen anybody go out to clean for 100 years, 40 years, whatever the case may be, 3-4 years even. So, I mean, just they're all human beings, and I think everybody is naturally curious. So if you're not constantly seeing that, like, oh no, it's bad outside, there's no life, it's poisonous, this invisible monster outside is still getting everybody, like you're eventually going to start to wonder again and need that reassurance. But yeah, I mean, you make a very great point about, like, look, if people are wondering, just let them go outside. Maybe don't treat it so much as a permanent thing where it's like, oh, you get sent out to clean and it's just like you're there is no reopening of the door. Like, no, let them go out, let them be the astronauts that you want them to be.
Yeah.
and come back and report if you make it back.
I think the best thing Bernard could do is actually follow through on his promise and make the innovations in the heat tape and actually try to get people above ground. Unless there's a chapter in the order that says, the reason not to do that. But I don't know. What do they have to lose, in my opinion? Unless the book says something like, hey, we need you to survive for 10,000 years. We took rockets to Mars because we colonized Mars. We're going to come back and we're going to rescue everybody. So everybody has to stay alive for 10,000 years. I don't know.
What is the point of that? Like, that's... I couldn't see that being the case. Like, that's just way too expensive. Like, just repopulate Mars from scratch at that point.
Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. Do you think he's actually going to do that with the tape? Like, do you think he intends to follow through with that? Or you think that was just a political line?
I think it was a political... I think everything Bernard said in this episode was pretty political.
Yeah.
Well said. He seems to have won over the people, though I do think it's going to be very short-lived. Like, it kind of feels like a like a ticking time bomb. If you don't make any of those innovations and try to send more people out or let them go out, don't send them out, let them go out and explore. I mean, I imagine that alone could cause an uprising.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right, as we end this deep dive, I want to ask you once again, what's your best guess as to what's in the vault?
Huh. What's in the vault?
We're going to find out next episode, so I feel like, at least I think we will.
I mean, I'd kind of hope so. Episode 1 was the most interesting part of that was, I guess, the bit with the vault in it. So I would assume we'll get some sort of closure on what is in there in the next episode or next two. I kind of feel like the thing in the vault has to be some sort of communication device. I mean, if it's just a server room, I mean, Bernard could access whatever from wherever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's some physical like communication equipment in the vault. That's probably the best I could think of. I don't know what else would be in there.
There's not like a get out of jail free card in there because that guy's definitely been locked in there for a long time. So I don't know what exactly is in there, but yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's any sort of escape hatch or anything like that.
It's something that definitely left a mark on Meadows, that's for sure. Which, I guess let's talk about that. Is she going to be his shadow or you think she's going to go out?
I don't see a point in her being Bernard's shadow again because I feel like she's already made the decision to leave. Right, like you become someone's shadow to take. It's like an apprenticeship. You become someone's shadow to take over their role when they pass on, move on, retire, whatever.
Unless maybe she doesn't want to die. Maybe it's one of those things where she saw Juliette go over the hill with the heat tape, and she wants to know if what she's defending actually has a good purpose. You know, maybe that's what it is. Maybe she wants to know if it's legit that the world is completely a wasteland, right? Because they have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe she goes over the hill and comes back. Because Juliette could have came back in, you know? So why can't she, in the middle of the night, go out there and look for yourself? Get your freedom. Go see the Wizard of Oz thing that, you know, it's actually true that what we're trying to defend against here, you know?
Yeah, I just can't see her coming back. But you know, maybe going back to the question of like what is in the vault, maybe the truth is in the vault. Maybe whatever the truth is, I don't know if it's just historically like what happened or the just hard realities of what the world is now was just too much for her to bear.
I think you're right on that. I think that the truth, like the full history of the silo, has to be in those vaults. That would be my best guess, is that they have an actual record, like a real archive of what's going on and why they're doing what they're doing as the overseer and all that stuff. So
yeah,
that's probably what I'm most interested in about the next episode, is to see what's going on there, really.
Same. Right. That and Juliette getting out of wherever she is right now.
Agreed. All right, let's do some categories and let's wrap this up.
All right, well, let's start with favorite character of the episode.
I think I'm going to say Bernard, to be honest with you.
Bernard is good. I might zag a little bit and go with Judge Meadows. I thought her performance in this episode was way better than any of the performances we saw in season 1. Was not a big fan of her at all there, so just glad we kind of got a little more backstory from her. And we're starting to see her character develop. And I mean, it feels like she'll be a pretty important character. I mean, through some of this season at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
How about favorite scene?
Oh man, that's tough because the whole episode was fantastic. I like the beginning with Bernard with the book, looking at what Juliette's doing, you know, opening the order. It's the first time we get to see it. I think that was probably my favorite scene.
I kind of liked the whole speech that Bernard did. Thought it was interesting. Really interesting to see how he like spun everything. To be fair,
Yeah.
Outside of just that speech in general, I mean, I think a lot of like the conversation between Bernard and Judge Meadows was probably the highlights of the episode for me. I appreciated those a lot more than
I did,
you know,
as
like
well.
the Shirley Knox, you know, Shirley Underground, like, you know, beginnings of the rebellion thing. Like, I mean, it's important to see that, but it wasn't the highlight of the episode for me.
Yeah, that was those Meadows and Bernard conversations were definitely some of the highlights of the episode for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
How about any lines that stood out in the episode for you?
No, I did not write any down.
I kind of didn't write down any either. I think the pieces that I remember was you know, Knox's comments on, you know, everything being like a tinderbox right now. Judge Meadows sort of like, I guess, metaphor of using the Wizard of Oz, like, I want that hot air balloon, or like, I want out, I want freedom. But outside of those two things, there's not really anything else that jumped out at me. Not enough for me to write it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, neither for me. Any more categories?
Nope, those are the big three.
We don't have any emails or comments to address today because a lot of them usually come after the deep dive. But if you guys do want us to go over any of your theories or questions about the show that we can discuss on air, make sure to email us between Thursday to Sunday when this thing releases, because we usually do instant reactions on Thursday night, which we won't this week because of Thanksgiving. But yeah, stay tuned for that.
Absolutely awesome. Well, you want to plug anything else before we wrap this up?
No, not right now.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of Silo by Story Archives. You can find this podcast anywhere you find podcasts, Apple and Spotify primarily. You can visit us on YouTube at Soapbox Podcast Network. You can visit our website at soapbox.house and email us at contact@soapbox.house, and any other links that you might want. They'll be over there on that website, so be sure to check it out.
Perfect. All of you have a very happy Thanksgiving week. We hope you enjoy it with your loved ones and that you enjoy this coming Silo episode and that we all find out what's in the vault this week. So have a great one, guys.